What's up? It's Angela Yee, and I am really excited to be here with ONE Musicfest and the ONE Musicfest family, talking to Stacey Abrams, somebody who I consider really important all year round, but right now especially, it is like a very urgent time. Let's talk about your initiative and Fair Fight.
Well, first of all, Angela, it's such a pleasure to be with you, to be with the ONE Musicfest family. I got to meet ONE Musicfest back in 2018 when I was running for governor. And when I did not win, when I did not become the governor of Georgia, I spent 10 days, in between election day and my non-concession day, the day I acknowledged that I wasn't going to become governor. But I refused to concede that a system that stole the votes of Americans, that prevented Georgians from voting, that it was right. And so as an outgrowth of that, I created 3 organizations, one focusing on the census called Fair Count, one focusing on the needs of Southern communities called the Southern Economic Advancement Project, but the one that focuses on voting rights and protection of our democracy is called Fair Fight. And we're just so proud to be in partnership with ONE Musicfest through our Civics for the Culture program, because we know that this election is one of those times when people say this is important, you should believe them. It's going to determine so many of the questions and the passions and values that we hold as a nation and certainly as a community.
I do want to address voter suppression immediately and talk about you personally. What did you learn about voter suppression when you were actually running for governor?
My first experience personally was when I went to go vote and they told me I'd already gotten my ballot and I'd never applied for it because I traditionally voted in person. I had the authority, plus I had a bunch of cameras with me, so I could tell the woman who was really well-intentioned, she was a good person who wanted to be helpful, but she was being given bad information by a misrun organization, the Secretary of State's office. And she said, well, you've already gotten your ballot. And I said, no, ma'am, I haven't. I had enough knowledge and enough authority to push back and got them to fix it. But we know that for so many voters, they don't know enough. They don't know what the rules are. Or if you're a first-time voter, if you're a young voter, or this is the year where you've decided, even if you don't think voting matters, you're going to risk it. For so many of those folks, voter suppression is going to be being discouraged from voting by having people tell you that you can't vote, or worse, being prevented from voting because they shut down your polling place. They won't let you vote by mail. And so the work I've been doing for the last 18 months has been about making sure that no matter who you are and no matter where you are in America, if you have the right to vote, we're going to make certain that you can actually cast your ballot and get your ballot counted.
Now, recently I was seeing that they said there is some interference, and I know that this also discourages people because they feel like the fight is fixed, right? So what are some ways that you can encourage people to still vote, even though they might feel like, okay, Russia's interfering with the election, Iran's interfering with the election? How do you tell people, let's still vote though, because we still have to come out?
So one of the reasons that we have foreign interference, and one of the ways they interfere, is misinformation or disinformation. They either give you something that's slightly off or they just lie to you outright. But the thing is, I have 2 rules for people. Number 1, don't panic. Mm-hmm. You know what the rules are. If you go to iwillvote.com, you can get the rules for your state, and it will tell you everything you need to know about your state. You can put in your address and they'll tell you everything you need to know about voting in your neighborhood. Or you can call 1-866-OUR-VOTE. 866-OUR-VOTE. That's a hotline with people who are just waiting for you to call and ask them a question about how you vote in your community. So we've got tools to combat disinformation, because disinformation works when it convinces us that it's not worth trying, or worse, it gives us bad information about what to do. So that's the first thing. So number 1, don't panic. Number 2, don't delay, because one of the ways chaos works is it slows you down. And we got to remember, November 3rd is not just election day. It is last call.
Right. That's the deadline. You can vote before that.
Exactly. So we have to think of every day as election day. In fact, if you lived in North Carolina, election day started on September 4th. So we're in election season. We need to make a plan to vote early, find out where you can vote early in your state. In almost every state you can vote early. There are about 9 states that don't allow for early voting. But in those states, you might have to vote in person on election day, but know that you're in that state and know what your plan to vote is. Make sure you know where your polling place is. They can't beat us if we overwhelm them with our numbers and our knowledge.
Now, I want to talk about young Black voters and why, in particular, it's important to get them to come out and vote.
So one thing that we started with Fair Fight, and we're so proud to be working with ONE Musicfest, it's called Civics for the Culture. We've got Yara Shahidi, we've got Selena Gomez, we've got Angela Yee. We've got great folks who are helping us with this because we know that when you combine Gen Y and Gen Z, they're 33% of the voting population in Georgia. The senior population that's the most prolific voters, they're 18%, which means you outnumber them almost 2-to-1. If young people were to vote in this election across the country and vote their values and their needs, there are more of them than there are of anyone else. And combined, Gen Y and Gen Z have the ability to win this election. And I don't mean just winning the presidency. We're talking about Senate races, House races. But I recently had a conversation with the Earth Gang, but they said the closer you get to the bottom of the ballot, the closer you get to home. And that is so true. I live in the state where Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in the streets, and it took 74 days for the district attorney and the sheriff's office to do anything about it, even though they had the murder on tape. Those elections aren't at the top of the ballot. Those elections are at the bottom of the ballot. So we've got to remember that for young people, you not only control what can happen in Washington, you can control what happens in your neighborhood, in your community, but only if you vote all the way down the ballot. Vote for every single person you can and look them up before you vote.
And it's never too late to get involved. Like I saw Shaq just voted for the first time.
Exactly.
Right? And I don't think anybody should be ashamed of the fact that they haven't voted previously. If this is your first time that you're voting, I think be proud of it.
Well, absolutely. Look, voting isn't magic. I know for so many communities, especially the Black community, people have been lying about what voting can do. Voting is not magic. It is not going to solve every problem. And showing up to vote for one person or in one election is not going to fix racism, sexism, homophobia, criminal justice, the environment. No, voting is a process. And if we're not honest about it, we can't then get mad about people not participating. Because if you tell someone, if you vote, the world gets better, you can't then get mad when they think, maybe you're not telling me the truth. Mm-hmm. I approach it in this way. We've got to talk about voting as a process. And, when Shaquille O'Neal said he was going to vote for the first time, I thought about the fact that this is a man who played a sport where he knew he had to practice over and over to get as good as, and even at his pinnacle, he knew he couldn't just stop. He had to keep practicing because there's always someone out there who wanted to be better. We have to think about voting the exact same way. The people who disagree with our values, who want something else, they're going to keep showing up. So we've got to keep showing up. And we're not going to get everything we want the first time we try it. We've got to do it over and over again. And the thing about young people is you're going to outlast the rest of us. So If you start now and you keep showing up again and again, and you use this process to build that muscle memory, to build your skills, when you run for office and you get to actually make the decisions yourself, that's how we get the kind of progress we need. And we know it works because the other side did exactly that. And that's why we're in the situation we're in right now.
Stacey, you are the expert. I always like to defer to you on these topics. You've written a book, documentaries, everything about Fair Fight. So let's plug what you have also so people can get more information the way that I always have to from you.
Thank you. Well, my book is called Our Time Is Now, Power, Purpose, and the Fight for a Fair America. It talks about the origin of voter suppression, what it looks like now, but also how we can defeat it because now there are more of us than there are of them. The film, if you like movies instead, you can go to Amazon Prime. We've got a documentary called All In, The Fight for Democracy. It's available on Amazon Prime. So if you don't want to read the book, you can watch the movie. And then number 3, Fair Fight. You can go to fairfightaction.com or fairfight.com and you can find out all about us, sign up with us, follow us, learn more about us. You can always find me at Stacey Abrams on Twitter, Facebook, and all of the platforms.